My name's Charley Miller. I'm going to be your teacher today for this 101 on culture. I don't know everything, but I know enough to be dangerous, I suppose. I'm the founder of Org Vitals. We use advanced data analysis to really understand how to best support people, how to care for the employees inside of organizations so that organizations can outperform their competition. We're going to break down quite a few things across the messy language of all things culture and try to demystify why it's important to invest in your people. I think a lot of people like to, put lip service against investing in their people and culture, but when you actually ask them how they're doing it, they just think, well, we got lots of nice benefits or got a nice break room, things like that. And it's just like, oh, that's not really what we mean. So we don't know everything about everything, but I hope this is meaningful. At Org Vitals, we are going to support all kinds of leaders that are working at the forefront of the future of work. There's new roles emerging. We'll talk about that. But let's kind of call time out real quickly and say, well, what is it when we talk about culture? Like, what is that? You can't point at it. Are we just talking about a group of people? Well, sort of. It's really kind of a shared commitment of people working together. It's working toward shared missions and visions together. There's etiquette, there's rules, there's all kinds of things that pull it together. But it is really hard to define culture. But we know when it's good, it feels wonderful to work in those places. And when it's not, it feels awful. Well, let's break that down. Let's try to understand what it means when work sucks. What does it do to us? What does it mean when work is great? How can that uplift us and get compound returns? On that note, that's why we've named this brief thing, How to Get Compound Returns by Investing in Your People. If you're going to become a leader in the future of work, you've got to understand this. Culture is not an HR problem. Culture is an everyone problem. All kinds of people can influence, and everyone should own their own culture. Now, leaders need to be strategic about the environment and the conditions so that they're really setting their people up for success. Because when you do that, that's when you start to get these compound returns. So one last thing before we really jump in. Future of work. We're hearing that a lot. What the heck is that? Well, it's a jargon, buzz phrase for all kinds of things, ranging from remote work to the new systems and tools we're using to collaborate to all things automation and now even Web3 stuff. So there's a lot packed into that phrase, future of work. But we do know one thing. People are going to matter more than ever. AI is not replacing the best of humans anytime soon anyway. And if we're going to harness the best in humans, then we really got to support them in the right ways. That's what this is really about. Investing in culture is not about engagement, not about making employees happy. Those are byproducts, and those are wonderful byproducts. But they're also kind of up and down. No one's just happy permanently. No one's just engaged like a robot. So we got to get a little deeper here, folks, on what we're talking about. Let's talk about cultures in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly. A good culture, everything has a compound return, and we're going to talk a lot about that. People remark on the culture. It makes it easier to hire. Culture becomes a recruiting advantage. The bad? Well, those are just basically 90% of the organizations out there who are dying a slow, boring death because everything's kind of hard. Nothing's efficient. Nothing's effective. People are looking for jobs elsewhere. The Great Resignation has a lot to say about the bad. The ugly, toxic workplaces, toxic leaders. Those are tough to fix. If you work at a place where the culture is ugly, there's toxicity, get out. Why fix those? Let them die. Let them die fast. Investing in culture is about generating those mechanisms that generate the compound returns. So, all right, I've said this a lot, compound returns on culture. What does that mean? Well, let me get my big head out of the way here. Let's start down here. All right, let's assume when we show up to our work, imagine every day we're entering a magic circle. That magic circle is our shared commitment to work together and adhere to the same vision, the same mission, the same rules, the same etiquette. A lot of people call these work agreements. That's one way of thinking about it, but it is essentially like, what are we agreeing to? Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's not. This idea, though, is that when we step into this space, we respect each other, we're respecting the work, and it's different than the rest of our lives. And I'm not getting into the work-life balance stuff, but when you show up to work, you are entering a space, and you're putting your focus and your energy into it, hopefully. And as you do that with other people, that is essentially what we're doing when we talk about culture. We're entering this magic circle. Now, from the network analysis we perform at Org Vitals, where we literally map everyone and their collaboration inside an organization to understand what does this magic circle really look like, we know that some organizations actually have that, a nice tight circle. But other organizations have lots of different clusters. There's some tension there between different groups. Sometimes it's a sign of a bad culture. Sometimes it just means people are really distributed across teams and departments. But the idea is here, there is this sort of cohesiveness to people working together across these agreements. All right, so next thing here, when we talk about working together, is how we share things. It's everything from sharing values through our behaviors to actually sharing knowledge. That's a really big piece of what we do. And the more efficient that gets, the more you're starting to get compound returns. And again, I'll break down what I really mean by that in a second. As things start to work well across agreements and sharing, and things become more efficient and more effective, there's more trust, there's more engagement over time, things become remarkable. This is really when you're starting to unlock now the compound returns. When people talk about their work with their friends, their family, that's when you're really starting to build a culture reputation. Your culture is starting to become a brand. It's what people talk about. If no one's talking about your culture brand, you have a bad culture. People are talking about your culture brand in positive ways and saying it is a great place to work. That's a good sign that it is a good culture. Now, organizations are doing everything they can to paint a rosy picture about their culture for recruiting, and who wouldn't? But the real truth is the word of mouth. How you treat people, how you support people will speak volumes about all the other considerations you make across the work. But compound returns come in another manner. It's not just word of mouth and remarkability. It's about performance in the bottom line. If you were to look at, from an investment perspective, which companies are truly investing in its people, this can be the number one indicator to get financial returns as an investor. The trick is, it's really hard to figure that out without just talking to people. That's a lesson for another day. But let's dig in a little bit deeper now on where we're going with this. All right. So this is the culture canvas that we use at Org Vitals to really understand a lot of what goes into culture management. It's everything from starting with how do we recruit people to how do we get people feel like they belong and included here, to working together to form strategy and then build alignment across all the different roles and teams to that strategy. And that brings us over to the why of the purpose and strengthening that. How do we work efficiently to make decisions with our meetings? Obviously, we're in the how down here as we distribute authority. Figure out our workflows. Create and reinvent our structure from time to time. How do we share knowledge and information? Where are the resources? And how accessible are those resources to everyone? How do we compensate each other? How do we share value for what we're building? And what's our impact? And of course, around all of this, you have to understand different ways to measure these things. And a lot of companies don't do this. Most companies don't do this stuff. Well, when you're creating a great culture where there are really strong agreements between the people and there's good connectedness and unity, then you're starting to get to this next space of efficiency and effectiveness, of performing the actual work. And then as that gets better and you're building your reputation as a culture, all of these things start to really flow and get better. Strategy forms and stays more focused. Alignment gets stronger. Purpose grows stronger in the people. And next thing you know, your retention numbers are getting better. There's less meetings because the things are so efficient. Authority gets more distributed because you trust the people and there's more autonomy. Workflows run faster. There's more automation. Structure becomes less structured because things are naturally forming and working and growing. Information flows like oil. Knowledge gets shared across departments and teams. Resources are plentiful and organized and easy to access by anyone. Compensation, everyone is rewarded equally, and it's growing because the business is growing and everybody wants to work here. The door's getting knocked over now because the reputation is so wonderful, and everyone feels like they can have open and honest conversations with vertical trust high, horizontal trust high, inclusion's wonderful. Now, no company is perfect, and what I'm describing right now is that perfect company. Everyone has a practice of improving the culture across all these things. But there's organizations that get it and are trying versus organizations that don't get it and don't even know how to start. So, let's talk about some of these drivers of long-term exponential returns on culture. This is some, not all, but when you really believe in trust and you give that trust and that trust comes back to you as leaders, that's a start. Building trust is a huge component of creating a healthy culture. Figuring out where you can be efficient in your operations. Making sure everyone feels like they have opportunity for growth and being included in the value that's being created. Inclusion. We'll teach a whole course on that soon. Connectedness, especially remote work, making people feel like they are connected to each other. Autonomy. This gets back to trust, but it's really important. When people feel like they have autonomy and that trust and the flexibility in their work, statistically tenfold more likely to stay with an organization for the long term than bolted. Capacity, and that takes on both workload capacity but also emotional capacity, and making sure people aren't getting burned out. And by the way, there's lots of types of burnout, and we'll talk about that more. Effectiveness. As an organization and teams work, are they able to effectively get the results and reach their goals? And what do they need to maintain sustainable effectiveness? And communication is huge, whether we're talking about feedback or recognition or guidance, any of these. Really some strong levers that companies should be using to strengthen their culture. But let's not forget, any compound return needs time. And that's really the most overlooked idea when it comes to thinking about what's going on inside an organization. No strategic initiative wins or fails in a day. No data point around engagement tells you anything about what's going on in a day. There's a lot of companies that rely on an annual employee engagement survey. That's like going to the doctor and getting your temperature taken one day a year. Imagine if that was the only medical test you ran all year long. Your doctor would have no clue about what's going on in your body. Well, it's time for organizations to evolve as well and really start to listen to all their employees on a perpetual basis. It's like building a muscle, continuous employee feedback, but it's really important. Whether it's just one-on-ones or actually using more sophisticated mechanisms to capture feedback. It's not just about aggregating that information, but it's really about understanding on an individual basis the human needs of the people. And that's what brings me to this. The winners in the future work are the organizations that align themselves with the human needs of their people. I know that's easier said than done, but it's the truth. When we talk about the time of compound returns, you can't just set it and forget it. You don't just design an employee experience and then walk away thinking that, oh, we have a great onboarding system and, oh, we're going to set up some mentors here and then be done with it. Those are great things. Those are really important things. But life is complicated and humans are complicated. And if the winners in the future work are going to be the ones that understand how to perpetually listen and support and care for their individuals all the way to the health piece. What do I mean by that? Well, think about this. We've touched on this a little bit. Most employees support their people haphazardly and through benefits. They think that's support. They'll either be lucky or wrong. Being a leader hasn't changed. What matters to employees has. 2, employers are measuring shallow metrics like engagement once a year. That makes it really hard to be really strategic about your people. People analytics are evolving rapidly, and I'm proud to say Orvado is at the forefront of this. If your people data just sits on a shelf and you're not using it, it tells me you're just wasting your employees' time. Don't be reactive. You need to be predictive when it comes to data. That means actionable data. If you're going to prevent turnover, you need to pinpoint where care is needed, and you need to know how to support each individual, each team, each demographic. If you're going to intervene, then you certainly need to be equipped with a data-driven approach. And of course, we know some of that at Org Vitals, but this isn't a pitch for Org Vitals. What I want to be clear on is making sure people understand what's happening. The idea of the culture problem sitting at the head of HR or chief people officer needs to evolve. There's so much on the plate of these HR folks. And culture is a massive, maybe the most critical problem inside most businesses. It needs to be something that's owned in the C-suite by someone who's just focused on two things. The organizational development, which you see over here on the left, and employee health and well-being, which you see here on the bottom. Today's landscape, you have consultants that focus on org dev, you have tooling for org dev, and you have some leadership development and DEI consulting. Meanwhile, in health and well-being, you have the benefits, you have well-being apps and services, and you have coaching. All these are fine and good, but in the future of work, in this white circle, you're going to see new roles emerge that really combine these two areas, which is long overdue. Someone who's designing and leading the organization for the future of work as it is set up for sustainable high performance. And to take that one step further, it's the sustainable high performance of each individual. What do you need to do over the course of time to make sure across the work agreements and across how we share things and even the greater remarkable nature of this culture that day in, day out, the organization has a culture that takes care of each other? It's about leading with empathy, of course, but it's also about having the resiliency programmed in to the agreements and how things get shared so that there is true support. We're seeing new roles emerge every week right now that are these two things combined in one role. VP of Org Dev and Health, or something we just saw from Meta/Facebook that's actually going to be an MD leading all things health and performance. It's a brave new frontier in the future of work, and we're really excited to see what it means. Organizational development, huge market, but there certainly needs to be a lot of new tooling to really help organizations understand how to architect themselves for everything I'm discussing. Corporate health and wellness, if I were to say that to you, you'd probably think benefits, but it's a lot more than benefits. When we are really going to be proactive about preventive wellness mechanisms in the workforce, there needs to be a level of activity working on top of those benefits to truly provide preventive measures. With that said, I'm going to jump back to where I opened, which is, remember, culture is not just about making employees happy or engagement. It's about creating these compound returns of the efficiency and effectiveness of working together. And when you do that, so many problems can be solved by the amazing ability of humans working together. And when it's really good, those environments give energy to everyone. When it's bad, it really drains the energy, and that's why health and wellness becomes a major factor for organizations. In the future of work, the organizations that are going to win are the ones that get this. All right, that's about 20 minutes on your Culture 101. I'm Charley Miller. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more of these. All the best.